Somebody was out there calling 707 Far Point Farms. This is 707 Far Point Farms here in the mountains of North Carolina. How you doing today? 25 in the Keystone. Got a loud copy on you, my friend. Good to hear you in there. It's a beautiful Sunday here in North Carolina. We got some clouds coming in, rain's coming in shortly, but I'm just sitting here enjoying the skip. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday and all is well wherever you are, my friend.
Yeah, we're doing about the same, just chilling and taking it easy. You know yourself a good day, number 25, Operator Terry in the Keystone.
73s, my friend. I'm back on the side. How's it going, guys and gals? I'm Eric, the owner of Far Point Farms here in the beautiful mountains of North Carolina, and what I just showed you right there is called Skip. Today we'll be talking about Skip. What is Skip? How does it work? What is this? Is Skip a person? What's going on here, right? I get a lot of emails asking me and messages on YouTube asking me about Skip. What is Skip? How do I make Skip work? You know, it's beautiful. That's the wonder of Skip itself, okay? Skip in its most basic form, and here's a picture that I drew here, or actually just a picture I found online probably. Skip is when I shoot a signal. I send a signal, I key down, and I send my little 4 or 12 watts out into the universe. That signal, instead of just going with the ground wave that goes like this, I'm drawing this beautiful picture, hopefully you can see it. Instead of doing that, it goes all the way up into the upper atmosphere, bounces off the ionosphere, and comes back down. Now, where it comes back down, well, that is the beauty or the mystery or the magic of Skip, depending on how you want to look at it. So if I'm going to talk ground wave, if I'm going to talk station to station, we've done some videos before on that, and you know, mobile to mobile, you may get 5 to 10 miles. Base to mobile, you may get 10 to 15 miles. Base to base, you may get 40 miles. I mean, the sky's the limit with base stations because of the antenna restrictions don't exist. But when it comes to Skip, you can be in a mobile application with a 3-foot tall antenna, or you can be here at the house with a Max 2000 like I have bouncing off, and it doesn't really matter. When the Skip works, your signal is going to go all the way up and come all the way back down. It may be 60 miles out. That would be kind of local Skip. Or it may be 600 miles out. That would be long distance Skip. I was just talking to, Pennsylvania. I was talking to Michigan. I was talking to New York. I was talking to Canada. Those are 1,000-mile plus. Well, not Pennsylvania, but upper New York, Canada, and Michigan. Those are 1,000-mile contacts on a 12-watt sideband radio. That's pretty impressive, right? So what you get when you're doing this in a car, it's not really about the wattage, and it's not really about the antenna size. It's about the atmosphere. And what happens is the sun, right, it has solar flares. And right now we're in what's called a solar minimum. And so there's not a lot of solar flares, so there's not a lot of Skip. But when there are solar flares, that charges our ionosphere, and that allows those signals not to go through it, but bounce back off of it. And that gives us our Skip. So I have made contacts in other countries. I've talked with Italy. I've talked with Australia. I've talked with England once or twice. So there are a lot of places that you can talk even that far out where Skip is just hitting at that angle and bouncing down and hitting thousands and thousands of miles away. Skip. It's probably, for me anyway, and for most guys who do this as a hobby, it quickly becomes the most fun aspect of talking on CB radio. And we have these numbers and codes that we use, right? I talk and I say I'm Far Point Farms. I'm 707 Far Point Farms in the mountains of North Carolina. Well, that 707 is actually part of my employee ID number from a job I had some 20 years ago. You come up with your own handle. I used to be North Star. You could be anything you want to be. You could use your real name. You come up with your numbers. Those numbers are to set you apart, because back in the 80s when there may have been 15 Far Point Farms out there or 15 North Stars out there statewide or nationwide, you didn't want to be confused with anybody else, so you gave yourself a set of numbers to go after your name. And people who keep records, well, they could take a record book there and they could write down, oh, I made contact with Far Point Farms on Sunday, you know, the June whatever, at 8 o'clock, and that's cool. And that way, if you ever got in touch with that gentleman again, you say 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years down the road, you had a contact, and that's called QSL. Some of this stuff may sound familiar to you. A lot of it probably doesn't if you're watching this video, but a lot of this comes from ham. So some of the lingo I'm using when I'm talking on this is CQ, CQ. I am saying I'm calling. That's just a ham call, right? CQ means, hey, anybody out there? DX means I'm trying to shoot skip. I'm not looking for a local contact. I'm trying to talk to somebody all the way on the other side of the country or wherever. It doesn't matter. It could be just one state away, I mean, even a few counties away. I'm happy to do that. If I'm trying to talk to somebody in a car in front of me or another driver, I'm just, hey, brake channel, you know. But when we're talking about skip, when we're talking about all the world, especially on sideband, we're using slightly different language than you're going to find on most CB radio communications. Again, for most people, this is where the fun is, and for me included. I could sit here on a day that the skip is rolling if I didn't have stuff to do, and I could play on this for hours and make hundreds of contacts, or at the very least dozens, you know, of strong contacts. Now, here's some more things about skip that are kind of make this an interesting hobby, right? Talking locally on radio, well, we could talk until our eyes turn blue and we just give up on each other, right? But if we're talking about skip, those conditions change. So I may hear nothing for hours on end, and then all of a sudden the voices start coming in through the static. I'm able to make contacts, let's say to upstate New York from where I'm at here in North Carolina, and I talk for 15, 20 minutes with a variety of operators, or just one. I have a 15-minute conversation with one guy sitting in New York. And then as quick as it rolled in, it can roll back out. Or it can change. You can go from New York, and the next thing you know, it just fades away, the voices fade away, and they fade back in a totally different part of the country. It's really, really a very cool thing, but it's something where it's not a reliable form of communication. A lot of ham operators will tell you that the difference between CB radio and ham radio is that ham, you can reliably communicate at very long distances on a regular basis, where on the 10 meter, well, that is ham, but on the 11 meter band, it's pretty much that sporadic. Some days you may get it, and the guy that I just talked to, I might talk to him again. In fact, I have a video right here.
Yeah, I think they're talking to you, Eric. I'm really busy over here in Cross Channel. I have my guy. I gotta get a safe day and a safe week, and I'll listen for you again sometime. I usually stand by on 25 or...
Of me talking to a guy all the way up in, well, where was that? I can't even remember because I filmed the video earlier, but it was a guy that I talked to a year and a half ago. So it's been a year and a half since we spoke, but it's same character, same guy, and it's just awesome to catch up. So you get to make friends over the radio that you may not hear again for a very long time, if ever, but it's cool to share some information with each other. Now, some guys just go in and say, hey, this is 707, hey, this is 194, you know, and you exchange locations and names, poof, and you're back on the side and move on to the next one. I'm kind of a talker, so I like to keep going. I like to see, hey, well, where are you at? You know, what's life like where you're at? What do you do for a living? That kind of stuff. And of course, obviously, a lot of times voices kind of crescendo over that conversation and you lose bits and pieces, but it's all part of the magic of skip. So if I'm going to say skip in videos, or if you're curious about what skip is, the number one most asked question, what is skip? Well, skip is when your signal bounces off the ionosphere, or skips off the ionosphere, and comes down at a different location in the country or in the world, and you're able to make contact with a person on the other end. Now, there's another thing about skip that also can happen where you can hear somebody beautifully, but they can't hear you at all. Your signal is bouncing here, and their signal is bouncing right to you, but their signal is way over here. So that happens as well. It's just part of the mystery of skip. So when we talk about skip, we talk about that. That is what skip is. When we talk about contacts, CQDX, this is Far Point Farms, right? That means, hello, I'm trying. Does anybody hear me? Does anybody want to hear and talk with Far Point Farms? 707. Well, that's just a number I made up so people would know back when I was North Star and there were other North Stars in the area that it was North Star 707 they were talking to. Nowadays, there's so few of us left that perhaps we don't need to have those numbers, but it's kind of stuck around. But these are not numbers that are assigned to you. These are numbers you come up with yourself. So if you hear me on the radio talking skip, it's probably going to be CQDX, Far Point Farms, 707 in the mountains of North Carolina, trying for a break. And I'll guarantee you when I turn this radio back on, I can get that break. So let's give it a shot. What do you say? CQDX, this is Far Point Farms, 707. Far Point Farms, 707 in the mountains of North Carolina, trying for a break. How you doing, Ontario, Canada? I'm actually filming a video all about skip since it's working so well today. And you're the one to answer, my friend, so good to hear from you.
Roger. They call me 320 here in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 45 minutes away from downtown.
Right on, my friend. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm right here in the northwest corner of North Carolina, Tennessee line, and I'll tell you, you're making a great trip today, Ontario, and that's 1,000 miles, maybe 1,200 miles. It sounds like you're in the backyard, so I appreciate the comeback.
Roger, Roger. I got you on 7.8 on my meter here. It's sounding really good here. That's what I'm talking at.
Appreciate it, my friend. Well, I'll be back on the side, 73s to you and yours, and I will see you next time. Take care.
Roger, Roger. Thanks for the contact. And, fine rest of the day, and God bless you and your family. Walk down.
And there are other people coming in, they're asking for me. So that is the thing. So like me and him were both at the 7 to 8 scale, receive and transmit. I was hitting Canada just perfectly. And that's the beauty of Skip right now. Some of those other guys that were a little fainter signals, when they may be 100 miles off or 200 miles off in either direction, and while my signal may be hitting them at a 7 or 8, when they're coming back to me, they're just barely above the noise floor. Now, I've had lots of conversations right at the noise floor with Skip, but you have to have a fairly quiet channel. And because there are so many people talking, because we've had such a lull in Skip, it's a little hard to do. But what you can do if you want to have a conversation with somebody that's not as booming as that, is say, hey, I'm going to move to another channel. And before making this video, I started on 38. I moved to 39. It got so busy, I moved to 40. People were following me to the different channels because they wanted a chance to talk. But, you can keep going. And this goes back to a video, and this doesn't cover the basics of Skip at all, but back in the day, guys would put export kits on radios and they would add uppers and lowers, because when the Skip is rolling like this, you could find all 40 channels completely solid, and they would say, let's go 40 plus, and they would go up 40 channels outside of the CB band to have that quiet conversation without a lot of or any interruption. Anyway, that's it, man. I'm really happy that I finally got a chance to make this video. A lot of you have been asking for it for many years. And it's just a matter of being in the right mood at the right time, in the right place, with the right conditions to do something like this. But if you have any questions about Skip, feel free to leave messages or comments down below. I'll try to answer them. All I can tell you is it's the best part of CB radio. It's the reason why so many people recommend you get a sideband radio if you're going to get into radio as a hobby. For automotive installations, AM radios are fine. For base stations, I like to recommend sideband for most of the fun talking, although there's still lots of AM Skip that goes on. Those guys usually run power. I'm running stock here that at sideband would be 12 watts, so you can see what you can do with 12 watts and a great antenna. Anyway, I'm Eric, the owner of Farpoint Farms. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, perhaps you'll think about liking and subscribing. I'll see you next time. Take care.
There's always something that needs a little fixing on Farpoint Farms. Freedom is mighty sweet.